What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're checking out 11 words I now pronounce the American way. This is going to be one of them what throws me, because I'm going to be thinking about my pronunciation after, and I'm going to be like, do I actually pronounce it like that? So as soon as I see the word, I'm just going to say it and then hear what Lawrence has got. So I assume it's going to pop up on the screen. I think Millie did this the other day. I haven't actually seen it. I probably did edit it. Well, I would have edited it, but I just clipped it up. I haven't actually properly seen it, so I'm keen for this. Smash that if you enjoy, guys. Smash the subscribe button if you're enjoying it as well. We would really appreciate it. 2 of Millie today, 1 of me, and then tomorrow we'll be back together on the reactions. And let's get into it. Lost on the Pond, his links in the description. What we got, 11 words I now pronounce the American way.
About 9 years ago, I made a video called 11 Words That Americans Love Hearing Me Say. And when I made that video, it was not an uncommon experience for Americans to actually ask me to say certain words. That's because I used to live in Indiana, where British accents are a rare find. That's my dog Heidi barking in the background. But recently, I got thinking about that video and I realised, ooh, Lawrence, it's been quite a while since that happened. Why is that? Firstly, I've lived in Chicago for almost a decade, and with it being quite a cosmopolitan city, people with accents are a dime a dozen, so I don't really stand out for that.
That makes
but also,
sense.
I started thinking that maybe it's because I'm just not as British anymore. And so today's video, as a reaction to that video, is a look at 11 words that, thanks to you lot, I now pronounce the so-called American way. So if you like watching these kinds of videos and you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, do that now.
You're going to see old ones as well.
Back when I was still eating fast food and we'd go to McDonald's, I would obviously want to get something that was healthy for me. Instead of a hamburger, I'd get the fish sandwich, which was still fried. And in Britain, I used to know that sandwich as a fillet of fish, which in hindsight...
Oh yeah, but that's the worst thing you can get from McDonald's. Like, yeah, fillet of fish. I only know it, the only reason I know it exists is because you used to get like handed like these vouchers, and it used to be like a male chicken or a fillet of fish. Obviously you go with a male chicken, or it's like cheaper Big Mac or something like that. Yeah, don't be getting them unless you like them, but stay away from fish. But you guys just call it fish sandwich, I'm guessing?
It feels weird.
Same thing,
in America.
really.
It's pronounced filet-o-fish, the French way, with a lot of French-derived words. I do like to try to get the pronunciation closest to French as possible, so filet-o-fish just sort of caught on. Don't get me wrong, I was mad at first when I knew that Americans said it differently, because I think British people tend to have this knee-jerk reaction to anything that America does differently. A lot of the time, the American way makes more sense, and then a lot of the time, it doesn't. Take, for example, how Americans pronounce famous type of French bread that you eat at cafes. For some reason,
croissant. Got to be a croissant on it.
In Britain, with this word, the French somehow convinced us to say that as croissant, croissant, croissant. Now it feels weird that I'm saying it like that. In American, they've just abandoned the French altogether with that particular word, and they say croissant. And because I'm a regular at La Boulangerie, which is a French cafe here in Chicago, I've said that word so many times to an American server that eventually there's just going to be less of a language barrier if I just say it the way you say it, not you. Well, you might, but the...
Someone said croissant to me. Croissant, would I be confused? Croissant. It'd take me a second, I'd be croissant, and then I'd get it. I think I'd understand it. I think you guys would understand a croissant as well.
That I ended up de-Frenchifying that word, and I too pronounce it croissant. So in the name of comment section flame wars, I want to know, how do you say it? Actually, give me your take on all of these words and keep it civil, because that's what my comment section is known for. And in the meantime, there are some words that I was saying the American way long before I moved here. And don't take my word for it. Instead, here's Lawrence sitting over there for variation. Thanks. And give me back my coffee cup. There are certain military words that have different pronunciations, military being one of those, but we'll get to that in a bit. But one of the famous differences between British and American English is how we pronounce this really French word. In America, it's lieutenant. And you're probably thinking, oh, I bet the Brits say lieutenant or something very French. No, we say lieutenant for reasons that...
Yeah, see, I mean, this called me really out on a previous video. I had like kind of thought I'd heard lieutenant on like movies and stuff like that a long time ago, but in terms of knowing people who ever said it, I've only ever heard it be lieutenant. Again, maybe that's because we maybe speak to you legends more about military stuff, or maybe we watch more American movies. But I personally, as a Brit, if I saw that word, I'd see lieutenant, and if someone said lieutenant to me, I'd be like, are you just taking a mick or that? Because so I guess it's wherever you go up in Britain. I don't watch too many movies, so again, that probably helps why I don't know lieutenant as much. But if someone said lieutenant, I'd piece it together. I think, yeah, that's the easiest way to describe it, I think.
I
But I
can't
say
be bothered to
lieutenant.
look up, but I've never said it that way, and I imagine that the influence of American movies, which often features the US military,
Yeah.
probably indoctrinated me from an early age. And now
Yeah.
that I've just said it out loud, I've just realised lieutenant sounds like the tenant of a toilet. Thanks, Lawrence. As a fan of sports, there is one word that always used to stick out to me as being either a British pronunciation or an American
Okay.
pronunciation, and that word is semi, as in S-E-M-I. And if you're American, you might be thinking, Lawrence, you just pronounced it in a way that was un-American. How dare you?
Yeah, that's like I'd say semicircle. We used to have a football player called Semi Ajayi, and a funny chant for him. Yeah, semi.
Get
That's how
out
I'd
of this
say it.
country. Well, there is a caveat to this. I say semi if I'm watching the World Cup and I'm talking about the
Semi-final.
semi-finals.
Yeah.
But I say semi if I'm talking about the truck. It sounds better.
Okay.
It should sound American because those kinds of trucks, to me, they're synonymous with America. I don't really
Okay.
have any logic behind that, except that language is weird and everybody else is wrong. And I used to think that Americans were very, 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 very wrong on this one. And that's the pronunciation of the country in South America that's long and thin and has a lot of seismic activity. And that country is Chile. At least that's exactly
Chile,
how I used
yeah.
to pronounce
I'd say Chile.
it.
That's how
and
I would say.
inexplicably, I and quite a lot of people in Britain were aghast at the typical American pronunciation, which is Chile. In our minds, usually quite
Yeah.
detached from the Spanish language itself, we thought, ooh, here go Americans again, changing the language just to be unique and different and full of themselves. When it turns out that Chile is closer to the pronunciation that you would hear
There
in
you go.
Chile. And so over time, when
Again, I mean, at the end of the day, if I say Chile, you say Chile, we know where we're on about. It doesn't make a difference at all. But you guys are close, so it's, again, yeah, fair play. If we're closer, fair play. If you're closer, fair play.
found myself discussing the country, I've defaulted to that. Speaking of South America, I used to be really fascinated with the Amazon rainforest, and it feels like over
I used to
time
be, to
two
be
things
fair.
have happened there. Number one, another famous thing called Amazon entered our lives and seemed to usurp that as the most famous Amazon. And number two, I used to pronounce it Amazon because that's the chief
Amazon.
pronunciation in Britain. And we do that
Amazon rainforest. Yeah, I say Amazon. Again, you don't think about how you pronounce these words until someone points it out. But yeah, I say Amazon.
with a lot of words that end in ON,
Amazon, do you
marathon
say?
instead of marathon. Cinnamon instead of cinnamon. That one doesn't work. I got it on Amazon. If you say it every day for 20 years, you realise that you need better shopping habits. You know when you park your car and you pay some people to look after it? Well, being a YouTube sensation, I have to do that all the time. And because that's the case, I have to say the word all the
Okay.
time. And I didn't previously say it all that often in Britain. That word is valet parking. And that way of
Oh,
saying it
okay.
does exist
Yeah,
in
valet.
Britain, but there is another pronunciation, which is valet. When I hear that, it makes me feel like we snuck that word into the English language when the French weren't looking. Both
I mean, as a non-user of valet parking, in terms of the only times I've ever used it is in America, and that was when we were at LAX airport. We were at the Hilton near there, and we had valet parking. And now I say valet because that's what I got told it was. If I was just reading it, I know for a fact I'd say valet. If it was the first time I've ever seen the word, and I'm reading it, I'm not very good with my French and all that, and someone says, oh, over here, and I go, oh, you mean valet parking? So I can understand why people are saying valet, but I do say valet.
countries are consistently inconsistent when it comes to how they pronounce French words. Anyway, enough of me. Back to Lawrence. Thanks. My wife and I like to talk about art because we're really cool and intellectual. And one name that comes up all the time is a certain Dutch impressionist by the name of Vincent van Gogh. And that's not
I've
his
heard of him.
actual name. That's just a middle
Lost an
ground
ear,
way of
didn't
saying
it?
it that I've just
I
made
think he
up
did.
because British and American people pronounce this very differently. For most of my
Vincent van Gogh. Oh, do you guys say go or do we say go? Someone says Vincent van Gogh, I think. I think we say Goth. I think you guys say go. Let's see what Lauren
life,
says.
I pronounced it Vincent van Gogh, presumably because somebody saw the word cough and thought, similar. And at some point, while I was living in Britain, I learned that Americans pronounce it Van Gogh. Because
Yeah,
again,
you
presumably
see?
somebody saw the word though and made a similar choice. But in my experience, this is another one of those American pronunciations that British people get flustered by, and vice versa. And then don't get me started on the Dutch reaction to both, because it turns out that neither of us are close to accurate, but
Oh.
in the heat of deep intellectual discussion,
fair enough.
his
But we know
name
who we're
comes
on
up a lot,
about.
and I think there just came a time when we just got bored of arguing about how to say it, and we agreed with my wife's consensus that it's Van Gogh. I spend
Yeah,
way
it's the
too
easy
much
life,
time on
Lawrence,
this
it's the
channel
easy
talking about
life.
the weather, really because America has extreme weather, and one of those weather phenomena is the hurricane. And I thought I'd tease you there.
Hurricane. Oh, Florida just had a devastating hurricane. I just need it in a sense. I hope you guys don't have any more hurricanes ever, and hope you guys are safe. But I thought hurricane. I thought Florida normally get a sentence. Hurricane. I think that's how I say it. Hurricane. Yeah, what's on screen.
A little bit by using the traditional British pronunciation of hurricane, because that's how I used to say it when I lived in a country that, granted, doesn't experience hurricanes. And so after I moved to a country that does, you tend to hear that word more, and you also tend to use that word more, especially when in your job you're talking about extreme weather events. And I don't know, at some point it changed. I think the reason is twofold. There's that, and there's also a very specific, more frivolous reason. In soccer, there is an English centre forward by the name of Harry Kane, and in Britain we thought it would be fun to make his name a pun on hurricane, but it doesn't work if you pronounce that word hurricane. So I've changed that, and now
I don't think I've ever heard that pun, and I watch a lot of football, but I see where he's coming from.
now it feels right. I tell you, language is stupid, which is why a lot of us should spend more time in that building that houses books that you can rent. What's that called, Lawrence?
Library.
I think you know. It's called a library.
Yeah, a library. Library. I'd say library.
Library.
I
At least it is if you're sounding out every syllable within the word. I'm from the north of England. I'm proud of that fact. But there's no getting away from the idea that the word library was somehow 2 syllables.
Yeah, library.
And that's all right. But for reasons that I can't explain, words like library, or actually quite a lot of words that end in ARY, my move to America meant that I started paying real respect to each of those 3 letters. Instead of military, I say military. Instead of arbitrary, I say arbitrary. As in ChatGPT took an arbitrary copyright stance when it happily created an image of me being directed by Steven Spielberg, but couldn't legally produce an image of me showing the moon landing to an incredulous Abraham Lincoln on an iPad. Speaking of the word arbitrary, back to the other shooting location. Right on cue, Lawrence, or should I say, right on schedule, because I, like quite a lot of British people, have always pronounced that word schedule with a k. And why are you going
Yeah, see, I say schedule. Have you got the schedule there? But it's meant to be schedule, isn't it? I think schedule is the American version. And because I remember a guy at my old work, he used to not get annoyed, but he used to, every time I'd say schedule, what you mean schedule? I'm like, what? And I just forget because I just say schedule.
Such great pains to point this out, Lawrence, because I believe that there's a misconception among Americans that British people only ever say schedule. Some people say schedule, some people say schedule. I made a decision, perhaps very early on in my life, that I was going to say schedule because I just think it made more sense. Why did it make more sense? Because in English, most words that begin SCH are pronounced sk, usually not as high-pitched as that.
I
Think
just
of
said
school,
the word.
scholar, scholastic, these are all words that came from Latin, just like schedule, and in the English language, the exception to this are words like Schadenfreude that came from German. So I think it's incumbent upon us to differentiate between the origins of words in how we pronounce them, unless we just can't be bothered, which is sometimes the case. One other word that British people sometimes pronounce differently to Americans is Patreon. So if you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can do so today at Patreon.
Our link in the description to Patreon as well is in the description. Lawrence's link to his channel is where you can check out his link. We're not posting much on there at the moment, but there's a few explanations on there why, which if you just click the link, you'll see why. Smash that button if you're enjoying, guys. Smash subscribe and we would really appreciate it. We're hoping to be more consistent, which is why some days you're going to get solo Millie, solo me, but hopefully you're going to get majority double reactions. Smash that button, guys. Smash the subscribe button and have a fantastic day. Peace.